Good morning. I just want to advise our group that we are being recorded. We'll give it a couple more minutes because I do have 2 confirmations that have yet to arrive, but just so we know that we are being recorded, and I think people online can see us, Mr. Friendly, so we're refraining from making any type of faces or gestures.
Good morning, Paula. Good morning, Denise.
Hey there.
I'm gonna open a door. Have this guy in the lobby. I thought it was gonna.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that.
Good, busy, running late.
Sign
Denise joining remote today.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I am joining from afar. So I think I heard Jesse and Israel and we're just waiting on Rogelio. Is that right, Elva?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi Denise. Hi Paula.
Hey there.
Hello, I finally found my microphone setting.
Hi.
Hey, nope.
Mr. Rogelio just joined the chat, guys.
Oh,
In-person chat.
Awesome. So I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for making the time to come in today, and I apologize for my absence. But I think the bulk of what we need to do today is to just review the legislative platform document. Israel was kind enough to take the edits I provided and the edits Rogelio provided and compile them into a single document, which I believe you have in front of you that Elva had printed out. It occurred to me this morning when Israel sent it over that there were some notes that I had made that just need to be detailed. So, and I know we didn't provide this to folks ahead of time, so it's going to probably take a little bit of time to take a look at it and then provide feedback. But if we could just take a couple minutes, and I just probably starting, from the top and then working our way through. The first edit on that first page in the first under item number 6, private well assistance, I put a note, and this was relative to the funding crisis we had this summer, where the state was looking for money and they were going to sweep the interim solution money, so hauled water, tanks, bottled water, or I'm sorry, bottled water wasn't on the chopping block, but the tanks and hauled water were. And so I just need to probably add better detail of what that's referencing. And then we added a bullet about the transitional funding when folks encounter a dry well and then until they actually get their permanent solution. So take a minute to kind of look at that one and provide feedback or guidance.
So Denise, this is Jessie. I know we want to avoid making this overly specific. But I wonder if on that last bullet, the one that was added, support local control and coordination of transitions of programs. I think there's an extra O in coordination, but that's not my point. My point is,
there's also maybe an extra word, transitions of that doesn't
You're
quite
right. There's a lot of
sentence.
but I was just wondering if we could add to that with something like, with an emphasis on, you know, continuity of services to families. Because really that's what it's about, is
Sure.
it's not putting families in a position where one day they have services and the next day they don't, and they have no idea why or where to go next, you know?
Makes sense. So Israel, do you want to craft some language about that, or do you want me to take a stab at it?
I can do it. I have a note here.
Okay.
And we'll fill it in. I'm going over the entire thing this week, so I can just add it in that section.
Perfect.
We may need to add something to the challenge paragraph to correlate to that. I'm not sure if it's really represented there, but or if it needs to be, but that's great. Thank you.
Okay. So then moving on to, we had some changes under 7 for O&M, and those are tracked there. And I think the main issue that we were getting at in this one was we still don't have basically a sewer or water lifeline rate, if you will, the way other utilities have it. And that was the intent of AB 401, and it's still late and there's funding, but there's not a program to actually implement that. Any comments on those edits?
I'm sorry, Denise, are you on 7?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I was in the right spot.
Okay, if we've captured that, then
Are we sure it's a 5% allocation from GGRF? Is that right?
what's
I thought
that?
it was a dollar amount. Sorry, the last sentence of the challenge paragraph says about the sunset, there's an annual 5% allocation from GGRF. I thought it was a dollar value allocation, not a percentage. So I'm not positive, but I'm just fact checking.
I believe that I went and grabbed that information from wherever I grabbed it from. But I will, because I know that I had to grab the sunset date. So I will fact check that allocation.
Okay, that may be right, and I have forgotten. It may be that anyway.
It may be a percentage up to a dollar amount.
That's
maybe?
what I'm thinking. That's what I'm
Okay.
thinking. Okay, and then the solution, ongoing annual appropriations for SAFER, that feels too specific to me.
Okay.
Well, wait, is that intended to continue the program past 2030, or is that meant to just address like what they do on an annual basis with the fund expenditure plan?
My intent was for them to find money, and maybe Israel, you can help with the language there. The phrasing escapes me now, and so it's probably not right in the request either, but it's this ongoing annual appropriation that, like, basically in perpetuity, we want this thing funded.
Right.
That's how I understood it when I read it
Okay.
the first time.
Okay.
Okay, that was,
The only thing that's
that was
overly
my-
specific to me is the annual appropriation, the vehicle for that. I don't know.
we could take the SAFER program out and say annual, support ongoing annual appropriation for a sustainable operation and maintenance revenue stream. Does that, so that way if SAFER goes away, it's really getting at, we want to see an annual ongoing funding for this O&M effort for disadvantaged communities and residents.
So Denise, you think we need some type of language that's a little bit more broad, but would include SAFER so that it's just sort of a catch-all for
Yeah, that's
appropriations
that's
for
what I'm
this?
thinking. Yeah,
Well, I think if we take out SAFER, we lose our reference to wanting the program to continue. So I don't necessarily want to take SAFER out because I don't think it shows up anywhere else in this document. So I can withdraw my comment. Maybe annual appropriations is fine. And maybe we just add to it SAFER and or other.
Yeah, that's maybe what I was thinking, is just including it as an example of a program that we would like to see continuing.
Perfect. I think I talked over you earlier. Did you?
No, you're fine.
And I like the other edits. Good.
okay. So are we ready to move on to 8?
I think so.
Yep.
Okay, so if you want to take a look at that, we had a couple small edits to this one.
I think the major edit that you had included on the first document you sent over to me was the last sentence of that second paragraph. That was not in the original.
Okay,
Just a point.
I updated this section with current numbers based on the water board's needs assessment from this year. So that first paragraph got updated, and then the second paragraph with the numbers also was updated with our current numbers.
Yeah, that's great. So we went up from 32 up to 33 failing water systems in the county.
Yeah.
Great news, great news.
Yeah.
I wonder what you'd think about just that last sentence that Israel just noticed. If we just cut off the second half of that, because I almost don't want to identify the reasons necessarily that
Okay.
the expedited drinking water grant program is failing, because I don't really know. So I'm inclined to say something like, while the SWRCB has introduced the expedited drinking water grant program, the program only changes the time at which a funding agreement is executed, and here's my change, but does not appear to reduce timelines. And then just end the sentence there.
Let's strike the last bit. Okay. Is everyone else good with that change?
So the desired outcome is what then?
That they create a program that
An
actually
actual
implements projects instead of just plopping the funding agreement earlier in the process, which is essentially what this program has turned out to be.
Are we actually requesting that audits are not required and SEQ was not required? Is that what's?
I don't think that well, those aren't named in the solution.
Yeah, what's happening is they have this new, because we're experiencing it with our East Arosi project, they have this new expedited process, but it just moves the date at which you get a funding agreement, but everything in that funding agreement is still it's still predicated on getting certain things done. So in the past, you had to upload all of your CEQA and they had to review it and sign off on it before you got a funding agreement. Well, now we have a funding agreement, but we can't spend any construction money until they review all the CEQA and everything else, which still takes just as much time as it took before. So you get a funding agreement sooner, but in practicality, you're not able to actually move any faster on a project. So I think what Jesse says, without specifically calling out the state board and what they're doing, captures the captures the problem.
So it's not that we're wanting to get away from needing to do audits or needing to do CEQA. It's just that the review of those items is holding up the ability to spend construction funding.
Correct.
Yeah, especially for the purposes of this document, Eric. I mean, I would like to get away from some of the audit and the environmental requirements, but I'm not
Right.
trying to get that included in the county's platform here. But I do think this language, if there were legislation that were to come forward that streamlined environmental or streamlined auditing requirements, I think this creates the space for the county to support that.
Okay, because I was trying to get it, I know that we have a challenge, especially in some of the smaller disadvantaged community public agencies.
Yeah.
At getting those things done, partly because of management expertise, partly sometimes just lack of a board to operate.
Yeah.
Right.
And funding.
Yeah.
To do it. So if the challenge we're trying to address is rooted in costs, then I think that maybe the mechanism to address that is this, and this has been talked about, but the state assists in funding the audits, or maybe they don't have to be done annually. Maybe it's, something like that. But I mean, there are lots of examples of public agency, small public agency dollars being fraudulently expended, and those audits need to be there to keep the community members actually getting the benefits that they were promised by these grants. And so I wouldn't want to lose that, but focus on the real cause, right? Not doing everything, but
Right.
getting it done
Right. Yes.
in a way that's fun. They're able to actually do it. Right?
Actually get it done. I agree, Eric. I've been through way too many
I know you have.
instances of fraud to ever disagree with that. It's sad.
Yeah, in the past, sometimes the legislature has, depending on circumstances, had to do a bill just to get just do one little hurdle, right?
Yeah.
To get,
like
just
that one
can we get it built? Yeah, I was actually did that too. And so, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so, and I feel like, and to Eric's point too, is we want to make sure we don't lose the ability to make sure that the work gets done. But yeah, there's a lot of these reports that just don't have quorums for years. They can't get it done. So,
And if, sorry.
yeah, no, and specifically just because there's also been cases of mismanagement and controversy and things like that. And so want to make sure that the county supports the ability to get it done, but not get away from the requirements to be able to make sure that everything is being done appropriately and that these things do eventually get done.
Yeah, it's a necessary balance.
And I'd like to, maybe not now, but offline, we can talk and understand more of your thoughts on streamlining some of these things. On the time is part of the problem that it just takes the staff, PFA staff, just an undetermined period of time.
Yes.
So as part of the issue as well, then just maybe defining the review period, like the legislature defines the review period.
Yeah, that could help.
And we could effectively solve the fact that we don't have a change in timelines by helping providing some guidance from the electeds on what the time frame should be that's acceptable. Does that make sense?
That's,
So I'm out of my league here on knowing how long some of the time frame reviews are taking, or what you might suggest that they should be, but that might be another way to address the issue. So just provide staff the guidance.
Right.
And maybe not even the legislature, maybe it's the state board just decides that they're going to provide staff guidance on
Yeah.
review time period.
which would be an administrative fix.
Right.
Which leads me to one suggestion I had, which was on the second bullet under solutions. I think we could support anything that streamlines the process, whether it's legislation or some kind of administrative
Absolutely.
approach. Anything that works.
We can just change that to support
Any efforts to
any efforts to streamline.
streamline the process.
I have a question, Jesse. Do you think it's the reason that they take so long is because they don't have enough staff? Or is it
I
this?
think that contributes, yeah.
Mhm.
And I think they don't have clear metrics.
I mean, it's either that they don't have enough staff or they have too much staff. I haven't quite pinpointed it because it just feels like they have everybody looking at this stuff. Several years ago, they, instead of relying on their sister agency to review CEQA, they hired a bunch of scientists to do their own in-house CEQA review, and things just really ground to a halt. I mean, we're 12 to 18 months on them reviewing, CEQA documents that the county put together and adopted, and they just take a really, really long time to complete their review.
So Denise, they're reviewing their opinion of adequacy of a CEQA document that's already been adopted.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
like
okay.
for Yedem Seville, we had worked with DFW on some habitat and like limited operating procedures and that sort of thing to take care of a tiger salamander. And when we got it submitted to the water board, they wanted nothing to do with any of that, and we had to redo that portion of our CEQA and go back through, which has only now delayed the project several years.
Okay, that makes sense. That's a second bite at the apple. The agencies have an opportunity to be a part of the CEQA process on the first instance. And I'm imagining that you sent these documents to the regional boards at a minimum.
Well, we have like a lot of these projects, we have regular calls where the CEQA staff's involved, but they will tell you, oh, we're not going to review that or look at that until you've adopted and uploaded it into FAST, even though they have all of the stuff in front of them. So they won't, even though they're a part of it and they're right in the trenches with us, they're not officially reviewing or providing any feedback until after the fact.
So then you have to readopt based on their input. Are you readopting whatever level of CEQA you're doing?
For Yedem Seville, we did. Yep.
Yeah, if they require an amendment, you have to readopt and recirculate.
Okay, that seems a little.
Yeah, it's heavy-handed. It's micromanaging.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems like the easiest path starts with the administrative route and talking with the board to see if that's in line with their expectations or not.
Suggestion.
Is it appropriate to talk about some of, I know we're talking about legislative advocacy, but is it appropriate to talk about like priorities that we want, that the county wants to address with the state water board? The reason I bring that up is the state water board is supposed to be releasing an updated, some revisions to the SRF policy handbook, which dictates a lot of the application requirements. And I vice chair a working group that's working to get some input on the SRF changes. And it would be really great to get a lot of these input and recommendations on what's really holding things back as a part of that discussion. Just because we go to some of these meetings and a lot of the folks who are there are just Aqua or folks from larger cities who are not dealing with a lot of the challenges that rural counties are working with. So would that be something that that's separate from what we're discussing today?
Kind of. I mean, what we're doing today is looking at the kind of, it's not a static document, but it's the county's sort of overall platform, so that when, and Denise, correct me if I get this wrong, but when a question comes before the Board of Supervisors, hey, can you sign on to support SB, whatever, it doesn't have to go before the board if it clearly falls within the parameters set by this platform, right? So I don't think we're really setting, well, they do lay out priorities, but we're not really making specific recommendations as to, efforts to undertake. Did I get that right, Denise?
Yeah, and I think the other key is that it gives the board will select from these items, and Israel can speak to it a little bit better, that when they do their legislative visits, they can speak, they kind of can focus their efforts on, these various priorities. And so, yeah. And so, but from a staff standpoint, we don't necessarily need, I advocate all the time for changes. And so like from a staff perspective, I or a board member could participate in, efforts to change policies and procedures and give feedback on like what's really happening, boots on the ground kind of feedback.
Thank you, Denise.
Still a conversation I'd like to have. I don't think I have any other comments about 8 at this point.
Sorry, I'm just yapping away with my phone muted. So moving on to number 9. This I think Paula, I know I saw Paula said she had to drop off soon, but this one we were going to ask the state to clarify that, I think maybe the AG's office, but we also added a bullet point about supporting the coordination between the two requirements. And Paula, I don't know if you were waiting on anything from me for that, or. So that might just be me following up with Paula after this call, but I think we should still leave it in while we're trying to sort through it with the state.
Agreed.
Comments or thoughts?
Yeah, let's leave it in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Moving right along. And we go from, I think Israel, and I know you're going to clean it up. It looks like we skipped a number.
Yeah, we went from 9 to 11. I'll fix that.
So number 11 is about Sigma. And we were adding, this is the language Rogelio added for us about funding for various projects in light of fallowing and that sort of thing. So comments on that?
The Rogelio, will you expand on? I guess it's not your language, it's from last year, but the streamlining of regulatory and permitting requirements in projects. If anything, so it's not just, it's anything. What are we asking for with that?
I think that was specific to groundwater recharge projects. There was some, how those are permitted and how the regional board views those. I think there was some conflicting either regulations or policies that needed to be cleaned up. I don't know if that's been resolved. But like, for example, if somebody wanted to do like a stormwater recharge project, how do you marry recharge plus water quality standards so that you're not introducing, contaminants to the aquifer in your haste to do recharge, that sort of thing.
Might check, I think some of that's already been addressed. It started with the executive order. And the number's gonna fail me, 4-23 or something, and 423.
I think you're right.
And then it got codified in Water Code 1240, 1242, something like that. Where it does outline the streamlined provisions, I think, now. So I'm not sure what we're missing, or if this still needs to be there. I would be careful, like Denise's example, we do need to be careful about streamlining something that should go through the proper process to make sure that it's not going to cause harm somehow. And especially with something like recharge. Recharge is so geographically dependent that you can recharge all you want and have no positive benefit in an area. And that happens in Tulare County. If you're bound by the Corcoran clay, if you're way out west, you can recharge all you want on the surface and the upper aquifer gets recharged. And then if policies don't recognize that and allow you to pump that water from completely confined aquifer, you haven't accomplished anything. And so those types of environmental review processes to identify that, I still think are necessary, and we don't just cowboy it up in the interest of quickly implementing something really have negative benefit. So maybe we just want to look at, I'm going to be wrong on the water code section, 1240 something maybe, and see if we've gotten the clarity we need or if we need to continue.
Okay, and this would be something that I would, because the county doesn't do recharge projects per se, I would need to know from others if the water code section was cleaned up, or if if there still exists an issue.
Okay. Yeah, and as far as our projects, we've not relied on any of those flexible areas. We've just gone straight CEQA. Because we thought it to be more robust and we weren't using floodwaters that would be applicable anyway. So
Yeah.
But that only deals with floodwaters.
Yeah.
Which I guess is good. Most of the time.
there's a lot involved with that that's still unknown. It deals only with floodwaters. It's supposed to go to the benefit of the basin as a whole. If you've got a GSA that has some crediting scheme, you might be able to pump it later. And so there's no QA/QC on the data it's totally self-reported by the landowner. So, you know, you got the landowner that recharge will make a number of 20,000 acre feet. Based on his estimate.
His estimate, yeah, okay.
And that becomes 20,000 acre feet of credits. And it's pumped from, again, below the cork and clay and causes subsidence, or it exacerbates unsustainable practices.
Yeah, we got, when the executive order report was qualified when they were doing it, we got a couple of those applications, but a lot of the information was missing. So to Eric's point, it's really, you know, and I think the purpose was to provide flood relief upstream. And I think in this case, we're talking about White River and Allen's River. So it's great, but, you know, it'd be a little hard to kind of verify, you know, what you do is you're really seeing floodwaters on open ground.
Which again, if you're hydraulically connected, that's great to your pumping source. But getting into does it go to the benefit of the basin? Or is it controlled, owned, or otherwise?
Yeah.
You know. This is a statewide problem. This is not a Tulare County problem. And then a prior version, red lines support local control through probationary process, support a clear path to resolve probationary status. I agree, local control through the probationary process is important. I don't think we don't have that. So I'm also on this one, I'm just curious, is there a specific ask that we have? Or is this just?
I don't think there's a specific ask. I think it's just a general. So as things arise, the board can weigh in.
I've considered just having a totally separate, because it's a reoccurring theme throughout the entire platform. So I've considered adding just a separate item that deals with local control in a variety of aspects. So maybe that ends up being addressed somewhere else and can be used in various places.
Okay.
Like its own sort of subheading.
Yeah,
It just applies. to the rest of
local
the
control, unfunded mandates is another
Yeah.
one that we have,
Yeah.
things like that.
platform.
Yeah.
Can we have a bullet that is supportive of minimizing unsustainability that is causing undesirable results that impact beneficial users in the county?
Say that again.
Can we add a bullet that says something to the effect of we support minimizing unsustainable practices that cause undesirable results to beneficial users?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Israel, did you capture that? Or
Yeah,
we're recording this, so I can come back and get it.
Yeah.
So a bullet that supports, can you just repeat?
Minimizing unsustainability that's causing undesirable results for beneficial users in Tulare County.
Is recharging on hydraulically unconnected land an example of such an unsustainable practice?
It could be, but I mean, it's really just getting at some of the things that Sigma's trying to address. That we need to address.
Okay. The existing undesirable results, 6 categories.
I was gonna ask about if it was related to that. Your point about recharging and then getting credits for water that you didn't necessarily recharge to the basin. I wanted to see if maybe we could add something along those lines to as like a solution to advance. So something along the lines of ensuring that groundwater recharge is benefiting the basin that you're hoping to recharge, you get receive credits for. And then something along the lines of also avoiding groundwater quality facts as well. So there's a number of ways to do that, but also I think I'd be interested to see it, like particularly around areas where drinking water is a concern. I don't know if that's something that is really is what you were sharing.
It is, my suggestion was probably more broad, so it could fit within any of the 6 categories, not that we have to deal with all 6. I see water treatment. But we've got the other ones. So if we're doing this at a high level, I think it would apply to that, because the water quality, I mean, obviously, that's something that we're watching. Yeah. Something that is laid out.
I think it does make sense to keep it broad as the overall theme of what to try to do. Sorry, I would support somebody there.
I like that addition too. And I agree, I think what this Eric just said fits under what this Eric said.
But I do hear you, Denise, on the clear path to resolve probationary status. I think the board would tell us, well, follow the law and the staff report. That's how you get out. But this is probably getting a little deeper into some of the Tulare Lake lawsuit issues about adopted rules, adopted policy, so that there's a pathway that's not made up as it goes. I'm not saying it is or is not made up as it goes, but for GSAs to be able to point to something and say, this is how we get there. That I understand that. I think that, again, if you ask the board, they'd probably tell you it's fairly clear. And if you ask some of the locals, they'd say it's fairly unclear. So.
Okay, so I think we captured the comments on that one. Anything further?
I like the flexible spelling and the word flexibility. I'm sure you can fix that.
I'll just fix that one too. Okay, so number 12 is water supply south of the Delta. And this one has been on for as long as I can remember. And we just had one little tweak to that one. And we had 2 challenges under this. But apparently we also listed the same solution twice, so that was an edit. Comments or suggestions on this one? We include the funding to repair the Frank Kern Canal.
I'd like to add, if we're calling out the Frank Kern, it's not the only piece of critical infrastructure. So I'd like to at least talk about whether we get more granular on this list. We've got Frank Kern Canal along with roads and bridges. We've also got critical infrastructure pipeline systems that are at risk and being impacted by unsustainable practices. So if we're looking for other areas that we could look to be supportive of funding sources for, I'd like to consider adding other critical infrastructure, including pipeline distribution systems, to this.
So after the roads and bridges, we could also add
wherever best in that stream.
other critical infrastructure.
Roads, bridges, pipelines.
Critical infrastructure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what if we just
Yeah.
change that to critical infrastructure?
Infrastructure.
Yeah. That makes it really broad.
Not that I don't think it's a good idea that we specifically call out Frank Creek now. I'm not trying to.
Well, and roads and bridges were in there because there was a period of time where they were going to fix the canal, but then they were going to require us to raise our bridges without funding, and so we were able to advocate to get an allocation of funding to also raise our bridges. That's
That's the genesis of it.
were yeah.
That makes sense as to why we had it on here. That would be an unmitigated, undesirable result. So,
Any other comments on that one? Okay, number 13 is wastewater. And we had some changes because the governor did come to East Arosi and sign into law AB 805, which we list there. And so our request was to find funding for the sewer administrator, which I think is still an accurate request.
I believe that ultimately, Denise, maybe Eric knows, I believe that ultimately AB 805 added something at the end that said that cleanup and abatement funds were available to use
Okay.
for the administrator program. I'm not 1,000% confident of that, so you should definitely fact check me, but I
900%.
pretty much. Sorry, that was a really irresponsible use of numbers. I remember seeing it, and I believe it ended up in the final version. So I don't know if, well, maybe we can still support funding for wastewater administrators, even if that is the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess the only question is whether to eliminate the last sentence in the challenge paragraph.
Yeah. Or maybe just say ongoing funding. I mean, that's kind of the case in general is, ongoing funding
Is essential to making this
is
work.
essential. Yeah. Yeah.
You can't appoint an administrator and not give them resources. You're setting them up to fail, just like
Yes.
all the receivers out there who
Yeah.
not manage to, really advance circumstances.
So
Given.
we change that last sentence to ongoing funding is essential to do the work.
I like that.
Okay. Any other comments on that one? All right. And then this one doesn't have a number. It's I think this is our federal stuff, so they're not numbered, but it's water storage. And we added, which is specific. So Israel, I will take whether or not we should take this out or leave it in, but to expedite permits relative to water storage. I think there was a push for a while to try to dredge Success Reservoir. I think that idea may have gone by the wayside at some point, but Eric, you may know better. Not that you're just because you're down in that area, but it hasn't come up in a while.
Yeah, I haven't heard it get discussed lately. I think all the oxygen in the room was on the enlargement.
Yep.
Development. So I think it was seen as the largest value add was enlargement.
Mm-hmm.
And since there was progress being made on it, I think that's where all the focus went. We could find out if there's still a discussion about doing a dredging operation, but I haven't heard lately.
And I think I tried to clean it up a little bit so it wasn't this item. I think specifically was talking about dredging. It was the enlargement plus dredging, so I tried to make it more broad. But maybe I might reach out to Eric Lemus or Dave DeGroot and see if there's different language that we should include.
Yeah, Denise, that's what I was gonna recommend.
What was that, Rogelio?
I said, no, that's exactly what I was gonna recommend.
Oh, okay.
Reaching out to Groot and Lemus.
Yeah, okay. The next is subsidence, and it sort of mirrors the state platform. And we could broaden the solution to critical infrastructure.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest, Denise, that some of this Frank Kern facts and figures are now old.
Okay,
Can I get this electronically?
sure.
I'll work to update the facts and figures in there to be current.
Okay.
And the language to be current. It will be just facts, so I'll send it. It won't be controversial.
Okay.
But hopefully, if we do that, it is a current document, because some of this is in the past tense and the flow rates are.
Yeah. Okay.
The solution is super specific with the 5 bridges.
Yeah.
Is that really,
Yeah.
is that what you meant when you said change it to
Yeah.
critical infrastructure? Okay.
Yeah, I think this was back to the point in time where we were pretty laser focused on getting our bridges funded.
I
So we
mean,
can
the funding need is definitely still there. Tulare County got the bridges funded, but the project hasn't closed the loop on the funding yet. So yeah, it needs to be broader.
And then the last one is specific to USDA household water well assistance. And I'm sorry, was there anything else on the subsidence one? I have a note that Eric will update the facts and figures and that we're going to broaden it to critical infrastructure. But then the last one is dry wells. And so it's specific to the USDA program. That's the only federal program really that I'm aware of that offers that type of assistance.
I think I heard they raised the cap. So much like the canal language, there might be facts and figures that need to be updated there.
Jesse, you guys have access to this program, right?
Right, and I'm texting Tammy right now to ask her.
Okay. Because I thought we had checked in with your folks and that number was still.
Okay, I could be wrong.
We can double check that.
Okay. I'll let you know what she gets back to me with.
Okay, perfect. So that was all that I had.
Could I suggest one more federal item?
Sure.
Having to do with O&M really, but really for affordable water rates. The federal government is trying to stand up the Line Weep program. And they did a pilot round during COVID and it sucked because it never got any money to small communities. It all went to really big urban areas because the way that it was deployed, it went through Department of Community Development, I think. Not HCD, but a different state department. And they just pushed it to big recipients and totally missed the little guys. I don't have a specific recommendation for fixing that, but it seems clear that it could be done better and that it will be an evolving thing because it is a new program. So I just wondered if we might add a section kind of defining how the county sees federal support for low-income water rate assistance.
Yeah. Can you send me like the program name and if there's like I don't know if there's a website for it or just a little bit of background information so we can stand that up. I think it would we could use what we say on the state side for the same type of assistance and then just plug that into on the federal side.
I think so too. I think we can largely mirror what they said for the state. But yes, I'll post some info together and send it your way.
Perfect.
Thanks for considering that.
Yeah, CWC is supporting two pieces of legislation. There's one introduced by Senator Padilla, and on the House side, one by Representative Sorensen. I think it's to make the program permanent and also continuously funded. I can share, my data isn't too great in here, so I can share the numbers of those specific pieces of legislation on the federal level. But it would be really great to see just language about supporting the permanency of the LIWAP programs and the low household water assistance program. You could technically go under bucket 7. There's some mention there.
But that's the state
But that's the
section
state
of the
section.
document. So I was hoping to just kind of take section 7 and add it to the federal
Yeah,
section.
add it to the federal, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
But that's good to know. I didn't know about those bills. So,
Yeah, and if you can send us those bills, we'll definitely add them to our tracking.
Yeah, I'll do that after this call.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion on the platform, we'll open the floor for committee member comments. If there are any.
I think I'm all out of comments. I commented myself to the-
Thank you. Thank you guys all again for joining today and providing really great feedback and helping us get at least this section of the platform. I'd like to thank Israel that we are, the top performers here on the platform effort for you.
We definitely have some of the largest sections, that's for sure.
If word count were a competition, we win. So
Denise, I'm gonna send you and Elva the markup that I took throughout this meeting. And then we can compare what you captured. So,
yeah, I was just gonna confirm your schedule. So you're kind of reviewing the whole platform as a whole this week. It's gonna go to the board later this year or first part of next year?
First part of next year, I'm hoping by the end of January, when bills start being eligible to be heard by committee.
Perfect.
And Paul Yoder, our state lobbyist, is going to be here on October 28th and 29th.
Okay.
So I'm going to send out a invite for the departments to meet with him. You should be getting that soon.
Okay, great. I
Hey,
had a
Denise.
very personal meeting with him on last Thursday down in Bakersfield.
Oh
But I
yeah,
will
for
take the
breakfast.
opportunity to meet him again. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Tammy responded and she said that the USDA water well grant went up to $15,000.
Okay.
Still
Super
not
generous.
enough, right?
Not enough.
It's still nothing. Yes, exactly.
Okay. Well, I will fix my math and it will be, slightly better, but not fixed by any means. Okay. So then we have our next legislative subcommittee is scheduled for Wednesday, November 6th. I'm wondering if we need to meet again since the legislative session is over and the new one won't be started. And I think we've pretty much buttoned up the platform stuff. The commission will hear it again at our October meeting, and then they can also see kind of the more finalized version at the November Water Commission meeting. But I don't know what the pleasure of the committee is whether or not you guys want to meet on November 6th or have that time back in your schedules.
That works for me, does not me.
Okay. You just have to promise that you will come in January when we meet again.
Check the date.
Okay, we'll get the dates out soon for what the,
Is
So
there
we-
something planned on here? So would it be the 8th then, January
yeah,
8th? The first non-holiday Wednesday.
Yeah.
yes.
Will you need
Okay.
us to do any further review of the platform document? And if so, can we do it by email?
Yeah, we can send it out and we can discuss it at both at the October and November Water Commission meeting with all the commissioners.
Oh, that makes
Okay.
sense. Okay.
We'll keep it on the agenda for that.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Well, if there's nothing further, we are adjourned slightly sooner than last time, but still over time.
All right, we're good.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Denise. Thanks,
Paula.
Paula.
Bye.
Okay, back to it.
Yep.
So I interrupted the meeting halfway. We were meeting at CWC to talk about next steps for the AB 805
Oh,
bill and talking about how to get the state water board to get moving quickly. So,
and we're right about the money?
yeah, they have to
Yeah.
clean up the
Okay.
payment. To be able to work.
Okay, good, because that was really a non-starter without any money behind it.
They said they might come out with